Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
Welcome to Fandoms, a show from every fan's point of view, brought to you by the Nerd Initiative Network. Here's your hosts, Tony and Michael.
It was so close, though. You saw the little black box before. I was like, oh, it's happening again. Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be a show without some technical difficulties. So there's that. And what shall we talk about while we wait for Tony to fix his audio? Let's think about this. I feel like the guy in Anchorman that's like left sitting there.
There we go. All right, I'm back in.
There we go.
Mind you, like I'll tell you right now, installing a new GPU, taking and updating OBS is always something that causes lots of consternation and fear for me. And I figured out that it's the internet, it's not me, that makes Michael lag. We're not going to blame it on him that he hasn't had coffee. So otherwise, welcome to Fandoms episode 6. This is the Wakanda Forever, I guess, edition. It just released officially last night and today. And so we are going to talk about some news that's been going on. We will then go and talk about spoiler-free stuff about Wakanda Forever, our initial reactions. So you do not have to worry until we say we're moving forward with spoilers. So with that said, one of the things that I'm proud to say is we have a guest with us this evening, and that is Jay. Jay from the Daily Kazoo, J-Phrygian everywhere you would want to see him, and maybe some places you don't. But Jay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank y'all for having me. Appreciate you.
So we, if he looks familiar, which he should be, because if you follow us, you should be following Jay. But Jay was one of our creator spotlights not too long ago after we connected with him.
Appreciate y'all for that.
Oh, absolutely. After we connected with him at New York Comic Con, we do have one with the official Megs, which I don't know if have we released that one yet.
No, not yet. That one will be coming.
It's probably
soon.
why we still have followers. So. No, I love Megs, and of course we'd love to have Megs on. Of course tonight, he's got his screener for Wakanda Forever, so he's got a big old theater that he's be able to do that, and I'm super excited. And he's doing this right after coming off of going out to LA and doing like the box lunch gala, as well as doing the Disney screening for Wakanda Forever with Straw Hats. So I think he's too busy for us right now. But
he's too busy for me, and I'm his co-host.
we're getting big leagued already.
I know, but thankfully,
how quickly the tides have turned, the tables have turned that fast.
Yeah, how the turntables. But yeah. So first of all, we have some new segments that we're going to talk about, but I said we were going to do this earlier on, but I feel like it needs to be addressed first and foremost. Today we were notified of the loss of Kevin Conroy. If you don't know the name immediately, that's unfortunate because Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman for most of us for most of our lives at this point.
30 years.
30 years, yes. From Batman the Animated Series, almost, I think, all of the video games. I don't know if it's really like if it. There was a thing not too long ago. Everybody was saying like protect Betty White with all we needed to protect Betty White, and then she passed away, and then someone made a comment about the Queen, and then she passed away, and then I can't like I'm not saying that there's any correlation to it, but it's like we just had the Gotham Knights game release where Batman is gone. And then this happens. Mm-hmm. Like, I really feel like we need to stop manifesting stuff.
It's been a rough year for comic icons, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've lost a lot.
My buddy was just...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. My buddy was just saying, he was like, it feels like the bad news really do be coming in threes. Like, we just keep having just these crazy iconic losses.
Oh yeah. I mean, we lost Perez this year as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've lost a lot when it comes to like the comic world, and in entertainment. And I think that's the thing. Like, I wondered a couple of years ago. Like I'm 39 now, which ages me. I'm sorry, I'm gonna lose viewership, but I was thinking about it. Like all of the people that I grew up to are now elderly or really senior, and they're at a point now where we're gonna start seeing all of those people that we grew up to, just kind of like not long for this earth anymore. And it's something I think we as fans are gonna have to come to terms with, because as fanboys, you always get these people that are so upset saying, "I don't want to lose this person," or like I remember when after Arkham, I think it was Arkham Asylum, that was the last video game that Arlene Sorkin, who has voiced Harley Quinn since Harley Quinn was a character, because it was based off of her. And then after she departed from that game, that I think Tara Strong took over, and then other people. And it's like it's hard to let go, but I mean, Kevin Conroy's been doing the voice for as long as they would allow him to do it. And you think of him and Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and well, I mean, the thing also, like, so I was worried that people were going to speculate like what the cause was, and we found out it was cancer. Which, I mean, if there's any more of a reason to say F cancer, it's I mean, yet again, and per usual. But I also think it's really the sad part about this particular passing is that it's weird. Like, he was just at a couple conventions. I was looking at his social media. He had returned to conventions, and it almost feels like he knew, and it was like his swan song to see people that he loved and see the fans. And he penned that book about his personal life, and probably inspired a ton of people in the LGBTQ community. Batman coming out and just sharing his personal journey. And I just, it feels like he did this, I mean, to inspire people, one last time, which is just so sad when you think about it. But just I mean, what a good, an icon, but also seems like an amazing human being, which is just makes it all the more bitter,
Yeah, you think back of like the comic strip Peanuts with Charles Schultz. Schultz did it for decades. I mean, decades upon decades. And it was the day after he retired that he passed away. And it was like the idea of when you retire from something, you kind of lose the gumption or the desire to keep going. And Kevin Conroy wasn't one to stop. He was going to keep going. So, I mean, definitely unexpected. And I know a lot of people loved him. And I mean, he's the Batman we all know. I mean, he's been Batman longer than anybody else. You might argue who's the best, Christian Bale, Robert Pattinson, George Clooney, if you like that. But
I don't think,
but it's Kevin
no
Conroy.
fans out there that are saying George Clooney.
No, I mean,
Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. Listen, at least when Val Kilmer did Batman, you didn't have over 10 years without one. George Clooney single-handedly stopped the franchise for a decade. But
it was the bat nipples, man. You
or it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, even he realized at that point it was time to just become a governor. Yeah. It's bad when you do a Batman movie and the next thing you want to do is go into politics. So,
That's fact.
but yeah, but he will be missed. But mind you, it's kind of tough when you think about the stuff that that James Gunn and them are going to have to deal with now, being the CEOs of DC Studios. And it's like okay, you're dealing with the backlash of the Flash movie. You're dealing with Black Adam, though it was probably good for DCU, it's not financially recovering what they spend into it. And then you've got the loss of Kevin Conroy. It's kind of like it's everything is going to either set them up for failure or they're going to rise out of it like a phoenix. And then mind you, that the Phoenix personification, that I was just watching Iron Man and that came out of my mind. But yeah, absolutely. I think it was definitely shocking, and it was something that I wasn't expecting, and you don't think about.
It really, I mean, look, we're here to talk a lot about Wakanda Forever, and it would be remiss if we didn't say it reminded us of Chadwick, right? Like not knowing about this at all. I mean, Chadwick was a lot of a longer battle of it, which is just impressive on its own right, of course. That he was able to inspire people and continue to make movies and shows and everything. But I mean, you just get shell shocked. You're just kind of, you're just shocked and you're caught off guard. And then you find out the backstory, and obviously I think no one ever wants to, I mean, knock on wood, no one ever wants to have the attention on them for that reason. So they're not going to come out and really say anything. And again, it depends on what they do. I remember when Chadwick, I think his last acting job for Marvel was in What If, right? And he did the Star-Lord T'Challa
love that episode.
Great episode. And I remember hearing the backstory of it, and I think it was either Disney Plus or someone had kind of like what they call those featurettes, right? And they talked about that he wanted to show kids, especially diverse kids, a different side of T'Challa, and he knew it was like one of his last things he was going to do. And again, just like, I just can't wrap my head around that train of thought and that kind of just like a real life hero just wanting to make an impact, knowing that, their time is limited. I
actually think T'Challa's last part for What If was the Marvel Zombies episode.
Oh, you're right.
Which was even harder, because I never thought I would have teared up during a Marvel Zombies thing, because there was that moment on the Quinjet where between him and Peter, where they're talking about all of the people that Peter's lost and how Peter is struggling to keep positive, and T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, basically turns and looks at him and is basically like, death isn't the end. And when you realize, you're just sitting there like...
It was a line I did not need to hear, man. I was like,
like, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was saying. And it's stuff like that. I think that's one of the reasons, like, why we'll miss people like them so much. Because one of the things that I've always loved about the Marvel universe, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is the actors that have been in it. The majority of them have loved what they've done, and they've done it because they love the fans, and they envelop the character in themselves. And Chadwick Boseman was like that. Like he was just a strong, good man, and you don't have many strong, good men to look at and look as a role model. And for him to be the first, black superhero. I mean, yes, there was like Meteor Man and stuff like that, but those were all jokes. But to have him really just be that role model, it just gives you chills to think that the legacy he's left behind. So now that we've depressed everybody, let's go ahead before we go and do that.
More.
Yeah, before we do that. Let's go ahead and let's do some more lighthearted stuff. First, we're going to go ahead and give it to Pooja for Pooja's picks.
Hey movie nerds, it's Pooja, and I'm here to bring you the latest in movie news. Let's check out my movie picks for the week.
Get ready, Hallmark fans, because as of November 10th, Lindsay Lohan is back in Netflix's new movie Falling for Christmas, which follows a young spoiled rich woman who is suffering temporary amnesia after a ski trip accident. As she attempts to figure out who she is, holiday love is in the air as she begins to fall for the man who has taken her in. November 11th is the day that all Marvel fans have been waiting for, as Black Panther: Wakanda Forever hits theaters. Honoring the memory of Chadwick Boseman while introducing the character of Namor into the MCU, Wakanda Forever follows the nation as a whole as it grieves and overcomes the loss of their great leader, T'Challa. Not only does it feel like an ode to Chadwick, but it definitely feels like a movie for indigenous peoples as well as the women of Wakanda. On November 18th, She Said releases in theaters and is a depiction of the Harvey Weinstein scandal that rocked the world of Hollywood and the entertainment industry as a whole. Netflix will also be releasing Slumberland on November 18th. The movie follows a young girl who discovers a secret map to a dream world called Slumberland, which she explores alongside an eccentric outcast. This movie feels both whimsical and eerie, and I am so ready to watch it. And finally, on Apple TV Plus, Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell team up in Spirited, a modern retelling of A Christmas Carol. I don't think this story needs any more explanation, but I am beyond excited to see another fun holiday movie in our midst.
Well, that's it for this week's movie picks. I hope you enjoyed them all, and we'll be seeing you again next time. Let's get back to the show.
All right, great picks. As always. Now there's stuff that I have to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great because Wakanda Forever, I can at least knock that off the list because I've already seen it. But it's like, how many times are you guys planning on watching it by the time it's over?
Let's see. I'm already set to watch it the second time. There's actually a screener happening in Charlotte that an organization Color of Change is doing, so I'm seeing that again tomorrow, and then I might pay to go see it again. Not gonna lie. Even my wife was like, I could go see this multiple times.
Yeah, there's so many things you'll see more. It feels like No Way Home in the sense that I see No Way Home 4 times in the theater. It's like every time you see it, you pick up more things. So I've seen it twice already. I probably will go one more time just to kind of. Then that's when I'll like stare to see if there's stuff in the background or on the sides and just really try to like pick apart now that I know exactly what's going to happen.
When do you guys project this is going to hit Disney Plus? I mean, we're November, so I'm thinking January.
Has it been?
Thor?
I think it's been a 45 or a 60-day turnaround.
I think it's been 60 days. Because I think
Yeah, so
think
I
Thor:
can see
Love and Thunder
January.
was May. No.
That's so fast.
No. Thor: Love and Thunder was July. It was
And then
released
it
in
hit Disney
theaters.
Plus by September.
Yep. And
Yeah,
Multiverse
so
of Madness
yeah.
was May to like June, or right before July.
Yeah, so I can see it hitting. Someone in the chest is 45 days, but yeah, it's 30 to 45, 30 to 60 days.
That's so fast.
I'm seeing first of the year.
I mean,
very quick.
We were talking about the other day of how like it used to be like months and months and months. Now it's with streaming and things are getting, obviously like the attention span's shorter. 45 days is just bonkers.
Honestly, I don't like it. It's one of the things that it showed with, not to get too much in DC, but it showed with the detriment of like some of the DC movies, right? Like how many people were like, it's going to be an HBO Max in like 45 days. All right. And because this is a movie, I just hit something on my desk. This is a movie I wanted to see hit like 400 million opening weekend. But there is going to be that crowd of people that it's like, I can just wait till it hits Disney Plus. I'm already paying for it.
I hope that crowd is a little bit less. Like I was thinking back on it. Like I remember one of my favorite movies of all time, Jurassic Park. It came out in 1993 in the summer. I think it was like right at the beginning of the summer. And my life was obsessed with it. It was not until that was me coming out of third grade going into fourth grade. No, I'm sorry, going from fourth grade going into fifth grade. And I remember I was like in maybe sixth or seventh when it was sixth grade when it finally hit, I think, like on home video. It took about a year and a half.
Yeah.
To be released. Like it took forever for things to hit home video.
Long time.
Well, Top Gun was in theaters. What was it? 8 months? Like when that, I remember seeing a documentary because obviously that was another one of those like surprise hits. But Top Gun was in theaters. I think it was like 6 to 8 months. They said, like that's insane when you think about it. That is great.
Well, movies like that do the theater. Like okay, so for those of you who don't know how movie theaters work, it's it's ridiculous, honestly. The movie theaters see no revenue. So this weekend, if you go to see Wakanda Forever, they will make no money on your movie ticket at all. That money goes straight to the studio. The only money that they make is going to be on the membership programs or the concession stand stuff. And they're also venturing now into merchandising. Like if you were to go to amctheaters.com, they have a Wakanda Forever merchandise. You can actually get the Loungefly backpack that's exclusive. They're selling it on there. They're also selling some of the shirts. I didn't know about that, did you, Jay? There's a couple things that they're selling on there that, I mean, they're trying to build revenue because they make no money, and it's not until, I think if I remember correctly, it's not until they will not make revenue from the movie itself unless it's been if it's like been it's done well. I think it's for 10 weeks. After 10 weeks, then they make money on the film. So if like movies like Black Adam do nothing for them except for concessions.
Yeah. Well, that's why the experiences, we talk about experiences all the time, and the experience, like, I think we're getting into a phase with the internet, but with also just like coming out of COVID, but just in general of like commerce. The experience is the biggest, most important thing. So I went to the New York premiere the first time I saw it, but we saw it again last night, and we went to iPick, which is one of those like dine at your seat kind of places. And you said they make money on concessions, nice. I'm sure food, things like that. And it's not, the crazy thing about it's not much more expensive to have your own like leather recliner pod, get like, they used to give free popcorn. They don't anymore to iPick, but whatever. But like
you sound salty.
They used to as part of it, whatever. That's very salty. It's very buttery. I think that's the thing that, that's our go-to now. I mean, AMC, I think I love what they do with the merchandising. You got the bucket, the Wakanda Forever bucket, which is gorgeous. I mean, they're really doing a lot of fan events where they have like free comics, like the Batman had one as well. They're doing the NFTs, they're getting into that. So they're diversifying as well. But I think you got to differentiate yourselves. And I think that's why you got to focus on the experience, because I didn't know what Tony just said. And that makes a ton of sense of why these dine-in movie theaters are becoming more and more popular, because they're more intimate. They cost a little bit more, but you get a better experience, and it's worth it. And then order food, spend some good money on food, and pay the theater back. So it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what coming out of COVID. That's what a lot of people were saying about movies, because we basically proved that so many things could go straight to streaming and be successful. People were like, yeah, the movie theater commodity is gonna have to change. Like, it's to the point that like, yeah, movie theaters eventually are just gonna be about, you're gonna have to have like AMC is gonna have to like have a restaurant style type thing going on for people to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go spend $60 to go see the movie when like I'm already paying for Disney Plus, HBO Max, Hulu, Netflix. Why,
Which is why they brought back a lot of these subscription services with the theaters, where you can like AMC stubs and stuff like that, where you can like see 3 movies a week, because they're trying to get you in there, and then they give you the free upgrades. Like we went, and like, because the majority of the early screenings that I have done have been through AMC, and so when they invite me to come and watch the movie early, like, of course we're gonna get popcorn, or we're gonna get something possibly, and they lure you in with this. Oh, if you get this, you could at least get a free upgrade for the popcorn, the free refills, which is great. And then of course, this is probably the best marketing that these movies are doing now with these special popcorn buckets. And a lot of people were like giving flack for this one. This Wakanda Forever bucket, even though it's not as like cool as, let's say, or it's got that novelty as the Mjolnir did. This is very cool. Just the designs on this thing, and the fact that it lights up. It's very clean. Like I try to get you to see the light. Like it's just cool. And like when you're in a dark theater, like I wanted to keep annoying everybody by having it on, but I decided not to. But I mean, it's just a cool bucket, and it's something that I'm glad I got, because I mean, I had somebody give me the Avengers Endgame bucket when they used to have those metal ones. And if you check out Donovan Rose, he's got he went to, I think it was like not Cinemark, but it was one of the other ones, and they have like the round tins that were kind of the metal ones, and like there was like 2 different versions of it, and he was excited about those. So, and if by the way, if you guys you go to a Cinemark theater and you get a popcorn bucket, I will say theirs is pretty cool, because it's literally the mountain with the Black Panther statue coming out of it.
Oh, that's cool.
It kind of looks
Cinnabar
like
don't even exist near me, man.
yeah. So I heard that's pretty cool. Which I'm glad they had like some people who can't get to AMC's because I know some people it's like forever away. But I will say that one person did say that they look like the Avon decanters that people used to buy, where they're like shaped like something. So buyer beware, but it is pretty cool. And if you like something unique, it's out there. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
So we gotta dive into what we think about the film, right?
We're not there yet. We still got more. We got more segments.
Sorry.
Yeah. Pooja just kind of got us talking about movie theaters. Now, let's go ahead. We're gonna get with Derek. He's gonna talk. Derek from Paperweight Entertainment. He's gonna talk about, I believe it was the Teen Titans.
Hey guys, it's Derek from Paperweight Entertainment. HBO Max has dropped the first 3 episodes of Titans Season 4. And after saving Gotham last season from Scarecrow and the Red Hood, the Titans have embarked on a cross-country road trip of bowling, bonding, and bow staff training. However, their plans hit a little snag when a group of cultists begin collecting a very specific type of blood, and the Titans are thrust into the middle of a supernatural battle that they are not prepared for. Titans has been a very interesting show overall. It has been an up and down sort of a roller coaster ride of quality. However, I will say that as of last season, that quality started to rise, and I'm happy to report that the first 3 episodes of season 4 have been absolutely a blast to watch. The team has been together more in these first 3 episodes than they were in the entire first 2 seasons combined. We've seen the characters in costume referred to by their superhero names, and we've seen a lot of great action so far. On top of that, they found a very good way to sideline Superboy, a very interesting way to sideline Superboy in these first couple episodes, because that's something they've struggled with in the past, of having such a powerful character on the team, but not allowing him to be at his full potential. So they found a really good way of kind of keeping him back and out of the way so they don't have to always just rely on him to save the day, but also can cut down on the budget of having a superhero like Superboy on the team. Now, the standouts of this season so far, of course, Brenton Thwaites as Dick Grayson Nightwing is the solid leader of the team, very believable, a great representation of one of my favorite DC characters on screen. But the one that really is standing out to me is Tegan Croft as Raven. Now, in the first couple of seasons, she was not one of the more strong actresses on the show. She's very young, but she has learned, she has grown as an actress, and she's got a better understanding of the character, and it seems like they're going to let her do a little bit more. I'm excited where they're going to take her in this season. Now, the fact that we're going to be seeing the supernatural more in Titans is giving me a lot of optimism for where this season is going to go, because they are absolutely outmatched and outgunned, and it's going to be very exciting to see how they come together and stop this very, very overwhelming threat. So, if you've been watching Titans Season 4, what did you think so far? If you haven't picked up on the show yet, I highly recommend that you do so, but let me know, what did you guys think?
I love these segments because I think they touch on things that I normally don't think to talk about, which is, I think, the best part about it. Mm-hmm. Pooja gives us recommendations for movies that we wouldn't have thought of before. Derek, just giving us a breakdown there for Titans. That's awesome. And we've got one more before we can really dive into Wakanda Forever, and that is going to be Mickey with Star Wars. So we're going to go ahead and just give him the floor, and then again, when we come back, it's spoiler free, and then we will warn you guys when it's spoilers. So here we go, Mickey.
What's up, Fandoms? A pleasure as always, and I want to talk about the state of the Star Wars universe since our last episode. First up, Tales of the Jedi dropped, and we got a very deep and moving look into Dooku's fall from grace as he turns to the dark side. But we also get a look at Ahsoka from birth to her decision to join the Rebel Alliance. Animated in the style of the Clone Wars series, these 6 short stories written by Dave Filoni explore some really heavy subject matter. First up is Dooku's issues with the Jedi Council and the Galactic Senate, as he sees that they're not doing enough for real people on the planets that are suffering from oppression. Throughout this, Dooku is becoming much more comfortable dealing with his problems through coercion and violence. While we simultaneously witness the fall of Count Dooku, we get to witness the rise of Ahsoka Tano. We get to see more of the Togruta traditions and culture with Ahsoka's early life. We get to see her train with Anakin, giving her an advantage of surviving Order 66. And finally, we get to see her witness the oppression and brutality of the Empire as they come hunt for her and destroy a whole farming village just to find her. And I feel like we got to see one of the more badass moments in recent Star Wars history. And secondly, Andor, which dropped its 10th episode this week. The numbers say Andor isn't doing too well. Now, Star Wars can be a very polarizing subject, right? The whole franchise has been hit or miss lately, and I will admit to being fatigued myself. But I have to say, this is some of my favorite Star Wars content in some time. But I'm also a big fan of Rogue One, so I guess that tracks. What the show explores with the complex and dangerous development of the Rebel Alliance is a thing of beauty. I know a lot of fans see it as a slow burn, but I don't see it that way at all. I know we don't have mesmerizing lightsaber battles or daring spaceship dogfights, but instead we get this amazing spy thriller with some really great political intrigue. But even so, it is still not devoid of that beautiful and awe-inspiring Star Wars imagery. So Andor leans very heavy into the science fiction roots of Star Wars while trying to distance itself from its fantasy aspects. And what I think really drives that story and makes this series stand out is the acting. Performances for every single character increase my investment in the story and my interest. They feel real. They feel genuine. So that's my time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. I really hope you get a chance to watch Andor and Tales of the Jedi. If you do, or if you already have, reach out and let me know what you think, okay? Have a great night.
All right. So, with that and that amazing breakdown of Star Wars with Tales of the Jedi and with Andor, we are now going to migrate to the Wakanda Forever segment. This is spoiler free. If you have not seen the movie, you are safe until I tell you otherwise. So please do not feel like you have to run away. We will talk about, just the nuance of it. And then from there, you will then be warned. And so let's go ahead and...
Are we allowed to talk about when, Tony Stark makes his appearance in there?
Don't even listen. Don't even do that.
I'm just kidding.
Unless you want me to block you like I block Lex reviews.
That's awesome.
So, okay. So, Jay, go ahead and take the floor. I'll let you start off. Initial impressions and thoughts, spoiler free, about Wakanda Forever.
Man, all right. So, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I sat on it for a little bit. I had, my initial reactions. I sat and thought about it, talked about it with friends who have also seen it. The movie, to me, is near perfect. As far as like obviously, just with anything, to be honest, let's be completely real. When you rate anything, nothing is truly like a perfect 10 out of 10. You can always nitpick and find flaws. Mm-hmm. But like execution, the soundtrack, the scenery, the acting of some of the people in this film. Letitia Wright did her thing. Lupita Nyong'o did her thing. Angela Bassett did her thing.
Oh, Angela Bassett.
A wonderful executed movie. As I've said before, thank you, Ryan Coogler, because for him to be able to take this balance of everything we know about Wakanda and then expand into the realm of Talokan and have those two parallel planes of thought, planes of thinking, planes of history, and tying them and interweaving them together in the ways they did just was great. This was absolutely wonderful. Loved it. Loved the movie a lot.
And you talked about being near perfect. I remember, when did Black Panther was what, 2016? I think it was
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yeah, it was right before Infinity War.
No, I'm sorry, not 2018.
I think it was 2018. It was February 2018.
Yeah, because 2019 was it was Black Panther in the early part of 2018. Then you had Infinity War.
2018. You're right.
Then you had Captain Marvel, and then Endgame in 2019.
So I remember when Black Panther came out, and I always think about that. Peter Travers, who was a movie critic for Rolling Stone, now he's at ABC. I remember him writing that this was a perfect film. I think one of his only 5 out of 5 stars he gave it, like a perfect rating. But the funny thing is, going into this film, I was like, it's so hard to live up to that, right? Like, and coming out of it, I was like, wow, Coogler got really close, because again, it's very rare. You know, we go back to historic movies. It's very rare that the sequel, you know, aside from like Godfather, there's a few out there, The Dark Knight, the sequel's never as good as the original. And this time, it's literally everything that Jay touched upon, that he just hit it on the head. The world expansion, the visuals. I remember it's so weird comparing it to 2018. I remember how like much of a revelation it was when we got Wakanda for the first time, and how amazing it was, and we were all kind of taken aback. And then we get it again, and then some. I'm just beyond impressed. And also, we can't forget, this is given the fact that we lost the movie's star to tragedy. I just, it's insane how well this came out. You mentioned Angela Bassett. I mean, her acting is just incredible. And you know, I'm
commanding presence.
That you literally, perfect words, commanding presence, that like an absolute queen. And then I'm gonna butcher his name. Is it Tanakh or Tano?
Tanakh.
Yeah, he's fantastic too.
He owned the screen when he was on there. I walked out, and one of the first things I said, Namor, whatever you want to call Namor, the GOAT.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Like,
no Cuerto, yeah.
It was funny. Going back to Angela Bassett, I it was. I don't like when I'm watching a movie for the first time, like talking, but there was something about when she comes in, like just with her in the headdress, the way she posed. I'm like, first of all, she is a queen, regardless of what she's playing. And second, I remember I leaned over to my wife and I'm like, that woman is just beautiful. Like, she's just a beautiful person. And seeing her with the amount of emotion that she had in this part, just how she played it, like you felt the weight of her words. Namor, I thought, was very interesting, because for me, one of the things that I wanted from him was, I wanted him not to be a full villain, but I also didn't want him to just turn and become a hero. And because if you ever consider Namor in the comics, or Namor as he is in the movie, there is this duality with him. It's almost as if his moral compass is on a razor's edge, and it's always out for his own benefit and for his own cause. And I think he played that perfectly. And
I mean, let's be honest. He's kind of an ass in the comics. he's kind of a jerk in the comics.
He do be mean.
Yeah. Not many people like him, except for like Sue Storm, but it's interesting. Like, you have this film, and I said this. I posted this on Twitter. You know, the only thing that wasn't going for this film that the Black Panther in 2018 did was the physical presence of Chadwick Boseman. They did not have the physical presence, and I emphasize the word physical because he was present in this film, and you felt it through everything. It wasn't like they just wrote off his story and it was just them moving on. This film is 100% about mourning loss and coming to terms and understanding what it means in the next steps of grief. And I think that there are people who probably will have lost loved ones who could struggle with this film, but at the same time, this film might also give people maybe the pathway to healing from grief. And I thought they balanced that well, because it's not just Wakanda and their grief, it's also Talokan and the grief of the people there, or even the Moors' grief, and you see this idea of where can you go when you've suffered a loss and you've not dealt with it properly? And it's definitely, it's one of those underlying stories that just, I think, what spoke to me. And it's very much, this is not just a Black Panther. And I think that the way the title was put in there, where it's Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, this is very much the story of Wakanda. You've got Talokan, but it's very much the people of Wakanda. And what I love is that they delve deeper into building that world, that country, and you really do empathize with them, and you see how bad the outside world can be with what they're trying to do. So yeah, this movie hit me in so many different directions.
As you were explaining it too, and no spoilers, but as you were explaining to it, I just realized that it's also reminiscent of, because you said it's the story of Wakanda and its people. It reminds me a little bit of a parallel to Thor Ragnarok in certain parts that I didn't realize until you were talking about it. I'm not going to get into details until we hit the spoiler thing, but now that I'm thinking about the two movies side by side, there's a certain aspect, and we'll get into that later, but that I'm just like, wow, like there is a parallel there. And it's, again, about its people, and it's
seeing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we discuss that later. I'm seeing what you're talking about. That's a very, I did, my gears started turning. I was like, and something else that you mentioned, like what you could feel in the movie. So many moments with characters where you could see with the actor, and of course this could be us reading too much into it, but the actors and actresses acted so well that you could just almost tell, like, this is their moment, like as the cast and crew, to process that this scene is about processing the grief, not only from the characters within the movie, but also the fact that Chadwick's presence is here within this film, and that this is for him. Like, they followed through to make this sequel as a tribute to him. Something that I also equated it to, because as you talked about the sequels and things that, usually sequels don't necessarily measure up, or, darn near don't ever surpass. This, to me, felt like a Captain America Winter Soldier equivalent for Black Panther.
Yeah, that's very much so.
Yeah, I very much felt like we had an expansion of what it means to be the Black Panther, and what that means to people other than like the royal families or the different tribes in Wakanda. Like, obviously we had in the first film, Challenge Day, learning how the mantle has always been with T'Challa's tribe, but it is also open for others within Wakanda to take it over, and then having that taken over by an outsider as well. But with this film, you learn what that meant and the history of the meaning in the mantle throughout the country, and just getting to go deeper into that. It very much, and the way that I felt that it still ranked up to have a lot of parallels of the first movie, as far as like Wakanda and how it deals with the outside world, and what the implications of the outside world still bring to Wakanda. I personally, not to get into a whole bunch, but like I personally was really trying to like understand some of the thoughts around the movie for early reception and early screeners that people were saying, because I just was feeling like, no, Coogler is still in his bag. Like, Coogler was pretty much in the same vein as he was with the first movie in a multitude of ways, and we'll get more into specifics on that 100%. Later, because I got a lot of reasons why.
We also, we skipped over when you talk about the cast too. Winston Duke, evolving as an actor.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because I think Black Panther was either his first or one of his first films. He went to drama school with Lupita, right? They both went to, I think, a Yale together. I think either Yale or Harvard. They're both super duper smart. He is just more and more coming to his own, and then also the different side that you saw of him in this film Again, no spoilers, but like he showed a lot of range as a continuation of his arc from the first movie, which I'm the character development. That's what Coogler does just absolutely the best of anyone. I mean, when you think about like Creed, like again, it wasn't really a Rocky movie. It was 100% about Adonis Creed, and you see the progression and the way he does it, where he shows like a scene that early on that teases a backstory, but I don't know how he completes the arc with just like flashes. Like you know, we saw it in this movie, we saw it in Black Panther, in the original one, where we're seeing the flashes where you have Killmonger talking to his dad, and in the these little flashes, and he's got a style.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how he's able to give such a rich backstory with just a little glimpse. And I don't know how he does that, because they're literally 1 to 2 minute scenes, and you build on it throughout the movie. And we saw it in Black Panther, where we've seen it in this movie, and we saw it in Creed. In the beginning he's like fighting, and he's like I think he was an orphan. And so it's amazing, his style and his ability to kind of really tell a rich story with flashes and little bit. And so just an amazing movie.
Yeah, real quick, because also I want to make sure, because I think me and Michael have been going back and forth, but you mentioned about Creed and then just other Coogler works. I didn't even think about the fact that's a definite trope of Ryan Coogler, because the beginning of the first Black Panther, you're seeing King T'Chaka come and visit who we find out later was his brother. But then it's like, to then just tie it back to quick flashes of like, he's like, I found my dad with panther claws in his chest, and it's like, oh, they didn't take him prisoner at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's definitely a great, he does so well to take these 2 points that are so far apart and just like bring them together at the right moment in the story.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and then like the whole where you find out that like Zuri was kind of the reason why Killmonger's dad was killed, because because he was going after him, and like it was funny though, because I came home, I'm sitting down, my 7-year-old is like talking to me, and he's like, you saw it? And I'm like, yeah. And so we're talking about it, and he doesn't care about spoilers. So I'm like explaining to him what's going on. And the first thing he wanted to do was, while we're going to bed, put on Black Panther. And so we're sitting there, and he's watched Black Panther so many times that when it was that opening scene and you see T'Chaka there with his brother, my son's like, can you hide my face? I don't want to see him like kill his brother. And I'm like, buddy, that happens later on in the film, because he's remembering all the flashbacks. And it stirs emotions in him, and it's supposed to do that. It builds that emotion. And so when you have Killmonger, kill Zuri at the challenge, and you feel that because you saw the familial relationship between T'Challa and Zuri at that point, and then you see how Killmonger basically is destroying all of this, and there are all of these things that were left as little like questions of what's going to happen moving forward. And again, Wakanda Forever helps like really like trim those loose ends, and then also open up questions about what's happening next, because I will say this, when you end this film, no spoilers with it, there are things you're gonna walk out of the theater going, wait, so what does that mean, or what does this mean? And that's the whole point. It's that nod into, this is a bigger world, and you don't have to tell all of the story right now. Leave some things to answer later, because there will be a later. And yeah, loved it absolutely. But with that, we have been going on for a little bit without giving any spoilers. So I'm going to push this button right here, and we're just going to get into it. So you have been warned.
Open the floodgates.
We are not responsible. If someone clips this and sends it to other people, the reason we are hedging our bets that if you see spoiler alert and you continue to watch, you have no reason to be angry at us for anything we're about to say, because if you haven't seen this movie, we will devastate you. And I'm going to say this right now. My wife came home and we were talking, and she told my mom a spoiler, and my mom looked shocked. And I looked at my wife like, are you serious?
I'll never forget. I mean, the best spoiler I've ever seen in action was at work. And again, this is at ABC. You're working in a newsroom, and you kind of really... I will say, like, there's two quick stories here. Quick, and I will be quick for me. I know that sounds like a lie, but I remember we used to have an editor, you know, when you're writing for digital, who would recuse himself from editing Game of Thrones stories because he always didn't watch it on Sundays. He'd watch it on Mondays with his wife at night. And so he would always come up and he'd be like, Michael, I can't edit your story. And he'd walk away and he'd pass it up to the next guy, which I always thought was just like the funniest thing I've ever seen, because it was like, all right, that's cool. Hilarious. But the other one I will say is, like, someone spoiled the Force Awakens Han Solo situation for somebody. And to see, and I'm not like doing a spoiler warning for that, and to see someone, you know, she said something, she's like, I can't believe he died. And the person snapped their head around at work and was like, wait, what? And then
wasn't there one for like Today's Show, or was it Good Morning America, like on camera, like they spoiled something for the person, and like one of the hosts like dropped his cards and walked off screen.
Oh wow!
Like they're like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I saw that.
There was it kills me. I have to go back and find it. If I can find it, I'll share it with you. So
well, I remember also Damian Lewis spoiled Homeland for Jennifer. What's her name? Oh my.
No clue.
J-Law, Jennifer Lawrence. She was a huge fan. She hadn't gotten to that season yet, and someone said like, "Oh, you know, I'm sorry I died" or something. She's like, "Wait, you die?" And like, it's at like the Oscars or an award show. It was on a carpet. They were just talking. She's like, "I'm such a huge fan." And she, you know, obviously she's pretty busy, and so she found out in conversation with this actor that his character was killed off. That's another one that I always thought was really cool. That's on tape somewhere. It's really funny.
Non-Wakanda related, but it's like Madison ruining Sopranos for Wong. So we've even had that in the MCU. So worth it.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so you've been warned. Wakanda Forever spoilers moving forward. If you have a problem with it,
plenty of time to leave just now.
I know,
too.
literally, like goodbye, and we still have some people watching, which means that, you know, people were diligent and went and watched the film. So that's great. But let's go ahead and get this started. Let's first talk about that beginning. Like, yeah,
because you mentioned some stuff there, and I've had some conversations with some people.
There were some, and I'm not going to set up like too much, but one of the biggest concerns that a lot of people had with this film was how they were going to share the loss of T'Challa, and what were they going to do, and how could they be respectful for Chadwick Boseman. And I think they did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah.
That he was fighting an illness, and he kept it from them for so long, and he had some things set in place. Oh my word. Like,
my only question I have for that is, and I think I agree with you, they handle it so well. She was trying to make a synthetic heart-shaped herb, right? And to save his life. But didn't he still have it in his system? Because that was my question. Like,
that was a conversation I had with a mutual today, because they did not particularly like it. They felt like it was very much centered toward Chadwick, which is cool, but they were like, I don't feel like that worked with T'Challa, for example. And then, like, how does that measure up to like how, you know, Shuri is feeling about like Black Panther and the entire culture that she's grown up with? And I did have the conversation with her to say, and she was also like, what did she say? She was like, he had the exact same thing you're saying. He had the R-shaped herb, so like, what illness was stronger than that? And I was like, yeah, I guess a tweak, because I was thinking it had to do with that. Was it the illness was due to the original heart-shaped herb? Now, granted, how was that going to make sense with the other past Black Panthers? Who knows? But like, it would have made sense of why she wanted to make a synthetic herb, because something was wrong with the original one. So that's one of those things where I'm like, you know, once I had a conversation with someone about it, I'm like, okay, I kind of get that nitpick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, also remember when he received the heart-shaped herb, the first time, and then the second time it was in two different circumstances. It could have even been the fact that like they buried him in snow versus burying him in sand, or the dirt.
Right.
Because remember, where they buried him was where the heart-shaped herb was, and that was vibranium-rich soil. And so that could possibly play a factor into, because it's funny. And this is where the nerdy part of me comes out. If you go to Amazon.com, you can actually buy a book called The Wakandan Files. The Wakanda Files are scientific notes of the MCU through the first 3 phases. And what's really interesting is the book actually plays right into Wakanda Forever so well. Because one of the things in the book is Shuri is doing a case study on the super soldier serum with Captain America, with Bucky, and even touches on Bruce Banner's gamma radiation, and also Peter Parker's mutation, his mutate, and his ability. And one of the things that she comes to a realization is that there is a level of gamma radiation that's involved in all of the transformations. Steve Rogers had Vita rays. Bucky was exposed to the Tesseract, and Bruce Banner had gamma radiation that was bombarded into his system. And so, technically, if T'Challa got the heart-shaped herb, but wasn't infused in the ground with that vibranium-rich soil, he could have had a more tainted version of the heart-shaped herb. And so it's very possible, because one of the things in the book is she's trying to figure out if there's a synthetic alternative to the heart-shaped herb, which goes right into this movie.
Okay.
So
right, yeah, because that's where my thought is like they were like unexplainable disease, and they didn't like say like, you know, it's really when you just really analyze it is what I feel like, because the first time I watched it I was like, this is perfect, because I personally don't think any bit of that, as much as it's like, as much as the critique that I was hearing was, I feel like that was good on the Chadwick side, but not good on the T'Challa side. I don't think the point was T'Challa. Like I think, I think that was an intentional thing to just, this is about making a tribute to Chadwick in this film there, and the removal of his portrayal of T'Challa, which you could say that maybe that breaks some level of immersion. It didn't for me. Right. But I do understand the thought of like, you know, the way that they did it doesn't make it as much of a driving factor for Shuri, which is where I get into kind of with what you're saying is like, maybe there was something wrong with the heart-shaped herb. Maybe how many times he had it, you know? Because they have the solution or whatever that's supposed to remove it from your system. And I mean, he technically had the heart-shaped herb in Civil War because he was the Black Panther. He had it removed on Challenge Day. But again, then you also, this is where the nerdy over-analysis gets into. You could sit there and say, well, then why did no other Black Panther have this issue? So yeah, maybe your thing makes sense of like, buried in the snow, whatever. And it's like, sure, they could have thought of that. But you know what? They didn't. It's not what they did. But we can fan theory it.
I just realized something. I think okay. I promised I wouldn't go into too much analysis about this movie, but Chadwick Boseman,
same though.
T'Challa was gone for 5 years after the snap. He returned to Wakanda 5 years later. What if he had to remove the heart-shaped herb to do another Challenge Day that we did not see on screen? And so Wakanda was without a Black Panther. They were trying to do the synthetic heart-shaped herb to give him back his abilities because he's been without it. And during this process, he had an illness and just did not tell anybody about it. So, I mean, there's always a possibility. Like, you could think it through. But
and this is where the fandom
exactly
and
I'm terrible at that.
TikTok and the debate culture of it. I'm like, you kind of really mess up the whole movie when you think about it way too hard. Because I'm trying to think of what other movie
it's meant to just rip the. I mean, look, the the mechanics of it, it's meant to just rip the Band-Aid off.
Right.
To just start the movie off, which it dovetails into the incredibly also
Beautiful tribute.
emotional, Marvel intro. That's all Chadwick, no music, just
my theater was silent. You could have heard a pin drop.
Yes. Like it was
With a couple sniffles.
Yeah.
I literally from my peripheral, you saw people just kind of go like this. Like it was just.
I kept on checking on my wife. I don't think she cried, but I kept looking. I was like, I actually did not cry during the film. I thought that I was gonna get got.
I teared up. I will admit it.
The end got me.
There was a moment.
The end got me.
That
I mean, I also think to what Jay was saying earlier, what gets you the most and what is as impactful as anything is the acting that's almost like the healing process during the movie. You know, like Letitia right at the beginning when she finds out, like, the audience knows and she wants to get confirmed and like, oh, like, what's my brother's, heartbeat, BPMs or whatever it was. And then, and obviously, her mom's like, he's with the ancestors now. I mean, it's just, and then her response, and it's just
pain that she wasn't there. People were trying to tell her to be there, and she wasn't there. And then it actually goes into what you were saying about Coogler starts off one way, and then he drops little things along the way, because you don't find out until later in the film that, like, he didn't tell anybody. And why didn't he let anyone know before it was too late? And I mean, not to say that anything could be done with Chadwick's condition, but it was that parallel, right? Like, because that's how we as viewers and fans, and how maybe even some of them as the crew felt, was like, I didn't even know anything was wrong, and now he's not here.
Yeah.
So again, I think that the point, and that's why the over-analysis of the beginning, I'm kind of like, I was trying to have a conversation, and I completely get a couple of my homies' points, but it's just like, I think, and for them it was just like, I won't accept that. I don't think that was really that great at T'Challa. Like, I think T'Challa would have, they could have been like, he died in an off-screen battle, because he would be dying in battle. But like, what was there to fight?
Right.
What was there to fight? What was there to fight at that point? Because obviously this takes place either anywhere from some weeks to some months after Infinity War, because they do state that by the time we are where we are in the film, it's been 6 years since Thanos. So obviously the 1 year gap, and then you have the 5 years of the snap. So yeah, this takes place. So like, what threat? Claw was dead because Killmonger killed him.
They couldn't have it be like he was killed while the world was trying to take Wakandans resources, because the whole point of this film was to show that the Black Panther is the strongest being, basically, or the strongest protector for Wakanda. And you get that with Namor at the end, where he's basically like, the Black Panther is the strongest, surface dweller, and so in that sense, to let him die in an off-screen battle, I think would have cheapened it. I really do like the fact that they gave him something similar to Chadwick, because I think when you think of T'Challa, you think of Chadwick Boseman, and I think it's one of those things where the identity of both of them are so entwined, which is why I think that ending does a great thing for some future storylines, which we'll touch on a little bit later.
I do like Beeping Goat's theory that it kind of adds to what Tony was saying, where there was a challenge, he took the herb, and then she gave him a synthetic herb, and that made him sick. I think that's plausible as well. But to what Jay was saying, like, we shouldn't analyze it.
Let's wait till it hits Disney Plus. Let it be what it is. I'm
gonna rewatch it like 6 times and just be like, I think it's one of those things you just have to accept. That was meant to be a tribute to Chadwick. T'Challa was just the representation of Chadwick.
But then it was also a great vehicle toward Shuri becoming the Panther in the future as well, because like the project had been going on. The Wakanda Files had it. there had to be a reason why it hadn't been taken place yet, and they didn't have another Black Panther that entire time. It was something that had to be earned, and I think it was one of those things where, it also showed Shuri's mind, because I feel like one of the greatest things about this film was, a lot of people talk about these female leads have to earn it. I don't think that's the case. I feel like this film gave Shuri the opportunity to show the world just how smart she was. I mean, we knew she was smart, but every asset of everything that she did, even to the point of when she is fighting and she is 5 steps ahead, even when she looks like she's losing. Like, you have this concept of just she is the smartest person that I think we've seen in the MCU for a long time, at least on Earth, and to get that opportunity to see her be that. And as young as she is, the diplomacy and how she was able to mentor another young woman, and just
beautiful,
just amazing.
Getting into smarts though, let's just say she might have a surpasser. Speaking of mentor mentee, because Riri Williams,
yeah,
what an introduction to a character who is not known among most people,
right?
Which Marvel and the MCU is known for that, right? It's literally built off of Iron Man, who is a character that if you just went to a random person on the street, you say, who is this? Spider-Man. Who is this? Superman. Who is this? The Hulk. But you showed someone Iron Man, they were like, eh. Now one of the most popular characters. For them to bring Riri Williams into this movie, and she is a sparse 19, just the first time she pops up on the screen, she said it's a band today. 800 was yesterday's price. Yesterday's price is not today's price. She was another commanding presence very early on. And it's funny to see that juxtaposition of her and Shuri, because again, she's so smart, but then she's younger than Shuri, and Shuri's impressed by it, but Shuri's not worried about it at the same time. And it was so great to see them feed off of each other.
And the fact that they're like, why did you create this vibranium detecting device? And she's like, because the professor said I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it took me a couple months. And Shuri's like, a couple months. You could see the reaction toward it. And it's just one of those things where she just, you saw Shuri excited when she saw the blueprints and stuff. This girl has potential.
The casting was also done really well too, because I think Jay was talking about the juxtaposition. I think the physical juxtaposition as well. Shuri is imposing next to Riri. Riri's small, but I also think that's going to play in as a storytelling device, because again, when she becomes Ironheart, and she was Ironheart for a little bit, I don't know where we can name her in her progression becoming this character, but it also, I noticed that when watching the film and noticing, again, Shuri is now the Black Panther, and so she's a good foot taller than her, and so it also kind of adds a commanding presence for Shuri, but then also shows you the intellect and the grit of someone like Riri. So it's cool that they weren't eye to eye. They're mentally probably on the same level, but there were also, I think, really cool casting and visual devices while watching these two characters play off each other.
Right, because then because she's so much smaller, and I actually just looked into it. You're correct. We don't know where we are in this, because apparently Dominique Thorne, the Ironheart actress, has come out and said, we have not seen the true Riri Williams come into her own yet. That was just a taste, and which is insane when you think about where the movie went. And I mean, we'll get more into surprises, but talk about a surprise to have that tie-in of why she was in the movie, because we've just known she was gonna be in the movie. To have the tie-in of you know, there's this mystery scientist who like, how did they do this? And it's just like it's a 19-year-old girl in her college dorm
Yeah.
who just did it because someone said she couldn't. I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those things that like it's super simple and you just don't need to look into it too much. It's just like she just be building stuff.
I
Yeah,
loved
with
I
limited
love
resources. Yeah.
one of my favorite lines was when they bust into her garage and the guy's like, "Oh no, she's got Iron Man tech," and so it's just like, or no, he's like, "Oh no, she's got an Iron Man suit." and
And what's interesting to me too is that like she makes no mention as if like she's not like an Iron Man fangirl or anything. I think it was just probably similar to the Machine. It was just like, I can make one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently she's been doing it. She was like, oh, you can hear about me. There's some sightings of me in some different places.
And notice it was more of like a flight suit for her than it was anything else. It didn't have a weapon's purpose. It was more of she was having fun just doing this and seeing where she could test her limits. It wasn't a suit of like an Iron Man type suit until we're in Wakanda and she's using it for battle.
What about the parallels? I mean, again, this is where, and I got to watch it again to maybe I'll wait till it comes out on Disney Plus since it's coming out on Disney Plus in like a day or something. But
Feels like
but
it.
like the parallels, like we saw it when we saw the trailer, and I put one that I did really poorly where I put like Tony's first flight. And again, I know Ryan wasn't even going for this effect in the sense that like she's not a Tony Stark, you know, fangirl in any which way. But like, remember the icing problem and the oxygen problem that he had, and then he fell, and then like the same thing. We see that one of her first flights, like she goes up to take out the drone, and you know we know it's gonna happen. She's falling and comes back. You know, she comes back, and I just love the parallels of their first. You know, this was the first flight, but their first times, and there was a lot with like Shuri too that I wanted to notice, and then you know you're kind of immersed in the film and you see the walk that she does like Chadwick, and there's other little things too that were, I mean, it's just amazing how they kind of thread in those subtle things, and that's what makes these movies so amazing is these really like embedded, you know, nostalgic reminders, but with new characters and new stories and new depth. It's just kind of incredible.
Peeping Goat just put in the chat, and there's a fair point. There's even the parallel of like Riri, Shuri in the college dorm where Riri kind of mirrors like Tony recruiting Peter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you gotta come with me. Like, you gotta come with me like right now. We already know you did it. Just come on. But yeah, the movie and talk about just balancing a lot of characters. We talk a lot about like, you know, the Russo brothers with balancing a lot of characters in like the different Avengers movies they've done, or James Gunn with the Guardians or different things like that. But Coogler to be expanding on existing characters like Shuri, like Okoye, like Aneka, and then like some characters who we only saw a glimpse of before, expanding on them, but then introducing new characters like Riri or Namor, and just expanding on them all at the same time and getting them interacting. It was great. And as we talked about the parallels with these two societies, then the next biggest part of the movie, Namor, even down to the meaning of his name.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I actually made a Wakanda Forever no context tweet, and I did the "What Is Love?" album cover, because it's like as soon as I was like, "What is love?" Because the guy who caught, because when he first introduced himself, he's like, you know, my enemies call me Namor, and it's just like, okay, and you know, I've been thinking, I've been hearing, you know, everybody excited Namor, but then when you then see his past and, you know, the grief and the loss and what he saw on the surface world, and then the guy calls him, you know, Hijo de Namor or whatever. That's probably not what he said. I apologize if I butchered that. But essentially, he called him the child without love. And so I was like, oh, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Because he has no love for the people on the surface.
Right. And he was like, he's right. I have no love for the people of the surface world. He, like Tony said earlier, he had a very big driving factor of he's not bad. It's just what's in his best interest is what he wants. It's like he's a protector of his people. He don't really mess with the surface world. He's not even like trying to go at the surface world necessarily. He's just like, if the surface world start finding out too much about us, we gon' pull up on our orcas and our great white sharks.
The orcas,
the blue whale.
But it's what Martin Friedman said. And it's Ross, right? Is it
Everett Ross,
right?
yeah.
Everett Ross,
yeah. That's confusing. They get it mixed with General Ross, but whatever.
When they said Ross, I was confused. I was like, wait.
Because I was thinking in my head, I was like, it's Ross. So I'm like, but wait, there's General, whatever. But when he says, and that was a really crucial line when he's talking to Val, which also we can get into that in a minute too. But
yeah, because that blew my mind.
But when he's saying like, they're my friends, they saved my life, and like, can you imagine what we would be doing if we had all the vibranium in the world and yada yada yada? And so it fits so much into Namor, and like he just wants to send out a message like, don't mess with Talokan, like leave us alone. He knows that if people find out about it, especially people like the CIA and agencies that want to exploit this kind of stuff, they're gonna go trying to get at it, much like that, the rig at the beginning with the drilling rig. They're looking for this precious metal, and so it's just like, I mean, it all like ties in together. And when Ross was saying that, it just like, it carried a lot of weight, and it was so quick and fast, but it was also like, it had a lot of meaning behind it too. I was like, all right, cool. Like,
it's like, y'all are worried about Wakanda, but like, again, Wakanda could have been took us over, essentially. It's like Wakanda could have been invaded the US. Because I mean, she was like, oh, trust me, I do dream about that. But it's like, imagine if we had vibranium. Like, if we'd have had vibranium, let's be honest, where he getting at is America would have been like Germany. Like, America would have been like patriotism across every continent.
Yeah,
scary to think about.
Okay, and that relationship between Valentina and Everett was completely out of the blue. Like that
left field.
We never saw that coming.
Like, what?
Left field. Which I actually didn't find it to be that much of a detractor, but I did see someone say they were like, it felt like it distracted from the story, and I was just like, I mean, it was just kind of there. Like, I don't think it was a problem, but I don't know.
And that's Val's character. I mean, that is on point with Val and Julia Louis.
That's what she's been the entire time. Every time she pops up, it's just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you here?
I also feel like we got a better view of her craftiness with the fact that she had already bugged the Kamoya beads, and like she was playing him this whole time, and that was something that, we've gotten her where she's like, we've seen her with Walker, we've seen her with Yelena, we've seen her kind of like be there in the background, but we don't really know how much of a threat she is, and this is the first time that we get this real kind of like sinister, underhanded, for the government type thing. So I think it worked well, but then it gets Everett, away from like the CIA, because I don't think you knew at the end of Black Panther he was going to side with Wakanda because he knew what they were dealing with, and he was the only one that they would trust to be able to know what he was going on, and they didn't keep him there. And he owed Shuri, he owed them, and now he owes them again, because like.
And you also see where we're heading too, as we're talking about it. I'm thinking about it as well. Like, we talked about Namor, and obviously now he wants to have an allegiance with Wakanda in case, like, he knows that at some point someone's coming for Wakanda, which is probably going to be Val, right? Like, again, it's interesting. There's a parallel there too, is like with Namor, like he is not a villain. Not, you know, it's a slippery slope, right? Everyone's a villain on a bad day. And then, you know, when we get to the Thunderbolts and Val and that kind of a team, and you know, again, like the definition of anti-heroes, right? They're all kind of like their own agenda, and you know, they're all out for their own, right? And so that's definitely going to butt heads. It's not as you know, we're missing the righteousness of like a Cap or even an Iron Man or, you know, a Thor, or when you put those together, Wakanda's separate, right? Because Wakanda is just on a different plane. But like with Talokan, and then you have like Val and her, like it's going to be a lot of these like groups, I think, clashing, and so we're definitely going to see a lot of that are all out for their own interests, and it's going to be interesting to see as we pivot in the future to see how this all comes together.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into specific opinions, but I'm gonna try to dance around this as best I can. I don't understand how, and this is also my own personal opinion. So, like, I mean, someone could probably be like, "Well, no, this is why." I don't really see how some didn't find this to be as impactful or as even like on par with the first film, because again, when you have Talokan, it's so funny because Tony's like,
I know exactly where you're going at with this.
You're trying to avoid two words, but it just, you have Talokan and you have Wakanda, and you have Namor legitimately be like, people who look like us often are like, you know, invaded and enslaved, typically over resources. Like, because when he came to the surface world, the land that his mother was from, you know, overrun, and, you know, people enslaved, and over the resources that were in that area. And I'm like, no, he literally is in the same vein as Killmonger, but he's like, you know, but my people, you know, indigenous and Mesoamerican, like my people, similar to yours, over resources. And so the same way how the surface world is probably going to come for Wakanda, since y'all been without the Black Panther for a little while, they're going to come for us because they're finding us because of, you know, some tech that can detect vibranium. It's just one of those things that it is so weird to me how I'm like, oh, I don't feel like it hit the same emotional weight. And it's like, but it was there, but for a different culture.
Yeah, and you know, but you think about it this way, like it very much under the same vein, like you're saying. He and I think this is what's been great about, you have Killmonger, you have Namor. They're not necessarily wrong for their motivation. The execution is where the problem is, and I think that's where Wakanda benefited. The problem was Shuri was a great diplomat when she was in Talokan. Like that moment where she's like, she wears the dress, she's complimenting the civilization, she's respecting the things. Get past the you know how he got the diving suit. Get past that, because I'm sitting there thinking that was
some Game of Thrones stuff.
Right,
like it really is like some two houses, like, you know, negotiating to keep from warring over territory.
and it's like the seeing how both civilizations have benefited from vibranium, and it was the realization with Shuri that Wakanda isn't the only vibranium superpower. And in many cases, they are very much equal. One's on sea, one's on land, and so she understood the value of diplomacy. But he was looking for a war, and where the negotiation went from this one point to then it being either you do this with me or you're gonna be you know, facing the consequences as well. Like that was very much a it was a lot for her to have to deal with in the midst of her avoiding her own grief and her own, you know, right to the mantle, and, you know, trying to figure out what's going on, and then that battle in Wakanda was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Very.
I
I was
even with
edge of
spoilers,
my
I hate
seat.
saying it. It's like I had actually gone to the bathroom right before this happened, and so I was standing up at the entrance watching it because I knew there was something big happening, and so I didn't want to like block people while I was walking to my seat. So I stood there for probably 10 minutes and watched it, and I just remember standing there.
I thought you was gonna say you missed it. I was
Oh
like,
no, I saw it. I saw it. But I remember when I came back to my seat, my wife is looking at me and she's looking at me like this. And I'm like, don't worry, I saw it. But then I didn't realize she was tearing up. And I was sitting there like, oh, like, because I knew, because it was one of the one things, it was the one thing I didn't want to happen in this movie. Like I did not.
a lot of people was like, hey man, he's standing a little bit too close to Queen Ramonda on that beach. Little did we know.
Yeah.
I will say I need to hit up Terrell because I remember him looking at a thing in the trailer and he was like, it definitely looks like Namor is edited onto the reflection of the glass, but she's not reacting. So like I don't think that scene's actually happening. I think it's a red herring. It's not a red herring. It was not. He was there in front of that window and he man, y'all basically Shuri had a whole lot of loss in this movie. It feels like none of us want to say it.
But how
even though
chill?
it's
I mean,
totally tough.
like I mean, again, he ebbed and flowed with, like, again, he's not a villain, he's not a hero. He's
He would be
out to
so
protect his
nice
people.
and so scary at the same time, like multiple times.
And when he looks at her and he says, "You're the queen now," and I was like, "Whoa, dude!" Like, just cold as ice. And something to what Jay said earlier, we were talking about the comparisons to Killmonger. Namor is just Killmonger if he had grown up in Wakanda with family and had grown up with his people, and hadn't been, orphaned. And that's how I see Killmonger. If he had maybe been ascended to the throne, that's the kind of ruler he would have been, and it would have been a totally different story than the shock and awe of him.
That man would have been like, Namor, let's do this.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And so, but yeah, cold as ice, man. Like cold as ice.
That's just real quick before we move on to the next parts. Like the fight scenes, Namor. Everything about his fight choreography had me smiling. That man over here jumping on them wings like he on the basketball court. He was whipping around planes and striking through them. I was like, hey, yo.
Yeah.
Like, they really did his scenes up.
Now, it
100%.
also made me feel like his use of vibranium as raw vibranium was more powerful than their refined vibranium, because I mean he was cutting through like first of all the glass, he went through the glass in one hit. Mind you, he didn't go all the way through the glass, but like even Wakandan tech took a number of hits before it actually cracked the glass. And like he's cutting through the ships in a way that you didn't see with a lot of the other Wakandan tech, and it was almost like they have been so refined for so long. They're devastating weapons, but they're not used in the way to completely destroy like Namor's weapons are. Which made him more of a
maybe
threat.
the combination of his strength too.
Right.
Because it could be, because that is one thing I will say. I did not expect how his spear was going straight through vibranium in multiple fashions. Particularly through vibranium and then through a person immediately afterward. I was like, yo, you're not going, like, that was clean through. Like, wait a minute. And no, just a wonderful movie. And I think that the Queen Mother and I will say, because there's a little bit of critique on that too. And this has just been a thing I think that's been happening in Phase 4, where they just kind of jump past some stuff. They'd be like, yo, this happened. All right, moving on. Because They just pretty much jumped straight to, all right, we done had the funeral already. It was like, we're not gonna go through and show you all of the things again. But Shuri, even that too, like her being an intellectual, obviously she would already have, maybe not obviously, but in some ways, the storytelling of having someone who is so scientific based, not necessarily standing in all the faith and spirituality and all that stuff. And then it to be like, maybe she already was a questioning person, but she lost her brother. And it's like, boss, if I save my brother, like, I'll never question again. And she didn't. So she's already struggling with that. And then she loses her mother, and it's like, I don't believe in none of this. And she's telling her mom so many times, like, you didn't feel him. Like, that's just a construct of your mind. You're thinking that you feel him, and so it feels real, and all this stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like, they go through the grief process through the characters, but also what we feel as people sometimes, and what we felt as fans, even for Chadwick. That's again why I on par, if not better than the first movie in some ways. Like I said, perfectly executed, near perfect movie. Because again, I would literally only shudder to say it's a 9 out of 10 if you really nitpick and overanalyze a lot of things. Because like the fight choreography, the scenery, the soundtrack, the overarching feelings and storylines.
Yep.
And then also, did y'all notice that the ending fight scene was shot differently than the rest of the movie?
Yeah.
Did y'all notice that? It was like a different cinematic look.
Yeah.
That I didn't mind necessarily. I was just very confused as to why they did it.
It was very much character centric when it was on Shuri and Namor. And I think the purpose of that was because it was interesting, because I was sitting back and I was thinking about when she first took the herb, and we haven't even talked about the fact of what she saw with it. But
oh jeez,
that vision,
low-key,
vision is, I personally thought with especially when like as Killmonger is getting more heated in the conversation and the fire is coming down. I personally thought that was Boss like rejecting her. She was arrogant. She was wanting revenge.
That low key could be the parallel. I didn't think of it. You should make that video. Because remember, that is what happens in the comics. Boss actually rejects her as being worthy of the mantle of Black Panther. In some regards, you could say that that is the equivalent of she took that herb, but she wasn't ready.
Yep, she took it for all the wrong reasons. And so, of course, the one person she probably hated the most would then be the person who would be her kind of like her herald. And then it wasn't until the end when but it's even at the end when Ramonda is calling out to her. That's like the moment when, like, I think that was the moment when it changed for her. So it was
we talked about the storytelling device too. Again, what Coogler's known for, and like we're really seeing it come together. The guy doesn't ever tell you the full story up front. So like you flash
back.
You don't get her response to him. So you obviously have him being like, are you going to be noble or take care of business? But you don't see her response till later on. Classic Coogler, storytelling, where she's like, Namor's going to be begging for mercy. Like that, then you see that her response. So you kind of like, and also, did you guys notice the fact that she had the gold intertwined in there, which I felt like kind of like a mix of T'Challa and Killmonger's suits. Like I thought about that afterwards. Like she definitely like kind of took it to heart, the vengeance aspect, and then it wasn't until the very end that she was like, it's
almost like there was a reason she didn't pick up either of her brother's old helmets.
Yes.
It was like, I know I'm not about to be like him. I'm about to but yeah, like Tony, you bring up the good point of like, it almost feels like, because the whole thing is taking the herbs supposed to take you to the spirit realm, right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to see your ancestors, but it's almost like the Panther gods were like, nah, we're gonna show you who you truly are inside right now. They're showing a reflection of what she was feeling and what she was thinking, because they were like, you're not taking this mantle to protect Wakanda. You're not doing this to, you know, you'd like honor your brother's legacy or honor the legacy of the Black Panther. You don't even believe in us. You don't believe in the ancestors. You don't believe in the fact that your brother's still with you and everything like that. And it was one of those things that also, who is the loctician in the spirit realm? Because man's hair was on point. I'm just
Oh
saying.
man, I got shudders when I saw him.
So when she showed up and she walked onto the other side of the throne, when I tell you, the first thoughts were thank you, Marvel, because I know I am one to be angry and upset and complain that they give away too much, they show too much in the promo, too much stuff gets leaked too easily. This was on some Avengers Infinity War like best kept secret. Like, because again, there's obviously been the theories he would return. Everybody was so, angry. He not coming back. We done told you Shuri gonna be the Black Panther, and it's like we know. But for Michael B. Jordan to come back for a real quick, and it's really funny because I actually did see some people coming at others who saw it early, obviously making mention of cameos, and then it was like, yeah, I did see them say like, y'all just wait, and it was like, they was right, because that was a cameo that like I did not expect to see him come back into the MCU, and it definitely made me smile a lot, because I just, as much as I still do truly believe they should have, just left it at we saw the claws come out in the first trailer and we should have left it alone, because then obviously you're watching the movie and you're like, oh, this is that moment in the trailer where Shuri drops down in the suit. I would have liked to be like, I like my Captain America with Mjolnir hammer moments. I like my Thanos snap, everybody disappears moments. Like I like those. So this was that for me, like him sitting up on that throne room and he was like, ain't nobody here but me. It was great.
Oh my word, yes.
It makes a lot more sense now, though, listening to you guys talk about it, where, again, it's almost like she was denied by the elders for her, again, for the reason for doing it, for her, disbelief in, all the traditions and the faith that, her family has, which she obviously gets at the end. She finally, like, takes it all in, but it makes a lot more sense now why no one else is there, so...
But you know what it also does? It also makes you wonder, because Killmonger didn't get that treatment. When Killmonger went to the ancestral plane, he saw his dad, and he was kind of reassured. It really, I think that was the thing. Like, I think it's the idea, it was the intentions. Killmonger, yes, wanted to make the world burn and wanted, but he was out for protecting Wakanda. Like he was using Wakanda to basically help those of like him around the world, and then for Shuri it was only about her. This was about her and her refusing to acknowledge the grief that she was going through, and rejecting the elders, and she wasn't willing for this, and so she wasn't, I wouldn't say necessarily worthy, but Boss was kind of rejecting her at first, and.
I agree with Pooja though too. I think Pooja's I think whether or not she wants to admit it, I think she subconsciously wanted someone to be like, go take care of business, and not be like, I don't think she wanted to see, obviously couldn't have her see T'Challa, but I don't think she subconsciously deep down wanted to see T'Challa, because he would have been like, no.
And I'm glad they didn't do that. Like
Well, and Coogler said he wasn't going to do any CGI. I think the most that I could have seen and would have been cool, and again, we love and appreciate this movie for what it was, not what we wanted, but some form of a representation of T'Challa. So like similar to how you saw T'Chaka as a Panther and he jumps down and he takes his human form. Had it been, if she did see her ancestors at some point, like, maybe again, we didn't know Queen was gonna die, but like maybe we see Ramonda, her dad, and then like a panther like in the background kind of walking up, and like that's the representation of his panther spirit. But that's the only thing that I would see, because like I said, Coogler was like, I'm not CGI hologramming him into this movie.
Yeah.
I refuse.
Okay, there's like two more things that I feel like we need to touch on about this.
I agree.
And I want we're getting very close to that ending, which is the last thing I want to talk about. But I want to touch on two specific individuals that we really haven't talked about: M'Baku and Okoye. First of all, M'Baku and Shuri, and their relationship, how it's evolved was everything to me. That moment when they're in the woods and she's standing there, and it's after the funeral, which we didn't need to see.
A child who scoffs at tradition.
Yeah, and she's like, and he goes, you have lost more than anybody for me to ever think of you as a child. Mm-hmm. And that moment of respect, and then especially when she's with the counselor or the council and asked to speak to him specifically, she needed him on her side, because not only because I think T'Challa wanted him to watch over her, but at the same time they have always been at each other. But I think there's a mutual respect that we finally get to see with them, and I loved that, because M'Baku should be a villain. He should be a villain based off of the comics, but I don't think you could ever make Winston Duke a villain in my eyes. I love that man. Like, he's just an amazing actor, and so
his growth.
Oh yes, like it's just,
which is crazy. I looked it up after you were saying it. Black Panther was his first film. He had been like featured in like CSI and some different like shows and stuff like that. But yeah, Black Panther was his first. Like,
he's somewhat young. I think he's like 30, right?
But I loved in that scene where when we first have the council learn about Namor. Yeah, I'm sorry. Where he first like is talking about Namor. He's like, yeah, he's cool Khan, whatever that is, and he's like, basically like, we should take him out, because if we do anything he says, it's always gonna be one more thing, to the point of where when he's talking about it again, he's like, you hear a reverence. His name is Cool God, and he does the whole thing, and he's like, it's the Serpent God, and he's like, if you kill him, you're only gonna wage war, and like you even see growth with him in that moment, where with that, and then God forbid what that ending meant, because I walked out of there going, this movie did not end the way I expected it to.
Oh, I mean, sorry, go ahead. Jay.
Oh no, I was gonna say on part of the ending with Winston, it goes back to what you said earlier. Namor told Shuri, "You're queen now," but notice everyone still refers to her as princess, and then even by the end, she left Wakanda.
Yeah,
she actually, and technically the throne is up for grabs. Like, that's what that scene for Winston means, where he's like, it's challenge day and I'm here, so what are we doing? But the princess can't be here today.
And I also think that really adds more weight to his growth in the film. Like, he was almost acting as like consigliere to Shuri, towards the mid and third portions of the film. It's kind of Coogler showing us that he will be a good king. Like, he cares about his people. He wants to protect his people. I think he is going to be king. I think if we take it back to Civil War, T'Challa was the Black Panther and T'Chaka was the king, and it was fine. I think that's a really interesting. We talk about being modern and new. I think it goes along with the Dora Milaje. I think it's super interesting to have Shuri as the Black Panther, the protector when we need her. I think she will be prominent. Not prominent. She'll make a cameo in Ironheart. But I can see M'Baku being king of Wakanda.
Yes, and he's also not as opposed to technology as he was before. Like, there's been such growth with him. And it's just amazing. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm okay with it. Now, mind you, if Shuri ever wanted to take the throne, I think he would yield to her, because I think there's a mutual respect, especially within the with Shuri's family. But then also let's also talk about one other character before we get to the end, Okoye, and that dialogue between Ramonda and Okoye broke me.
I did not think that she was going to be the one on the receiving end of that conversation.
Oh.
I thought I thought Queen was yelling at some American ambassadors and all that stuff.
Oh man, and it just my heart broke because there's nobody. Okoye has proven herself time and time again to be one of the most loyal and patriotic, if you want to say, people in Wakanda. She was there for the country, even if she did not like Killmonger, because he followed the path. She had to be his general, and as soon as she knew that there was a righteous reason for her not to be behind him, she took it, and then she was right there alongside of T'Challa. T'Challa never held that against her. She went against her own husband, but even that that wasn't enough for Ramonda, and it helped me understand that Ramonda really had some deep-seated resentment, even though she had trusted Okoye for so much, that she still held, when they ran for their lives. Yes. Oh man, like the tears, I felt like they were real. Like if Angela Bassett was yelling at me, I probably would have cried. So seeing Denai Guara, who is a phenomenal actor, just her character break down and walk away, she just took it. And then for the council to try to defend her too, it was a hard scene. They
was like, hey man, I will say the Queen was kind of wilding on that. I was like, girl, this is where you draw the line, because the council was like, hey man, I think that she was like, no, you fired. Pack it, log off, log the computer off. Pack the bag, turn in your equipment, please, and let's get a move on. But yeah, Okoye, because it's one of those things too. The Queen had no idea, but you as the viewer, it's that dramatic irony of that Shuri went along her own accord. She wasn't kidnapped. She did it. It was the diplomat thing, like you mentioned earlier. She did this in order to spare Riri's life and say, take us. Do not kill this child. And that it was on her own terms. And the thing is she left her beads there on purpose in hopes that, someone will figure out a way to use it to track her and everything. And it was hard. It was really, that was a scene that I was a little tough too, because again, it's one of those things. They were she literally fought and was willing to kill her own husband in the name of Wakanda, and the Queen was just cool, and she can go see her husband where he's rotting right now. Yeah, but I can't see nobody. I was like, so we just having the Pain Olympics?
Yeah, it's she tells Shuri, you need to move on. You need to do this ceremony to move on, and obviously it's still too soon. She's not moved on, so she's struggling, and I understand the emotion she was going through, but still, it was just I felt bad for Okoye. I felt really bad, and it was for her to just be disgraced, and then seeing her not in the Dora Milaje outfit. And I know you see the posters and the Midnight Angels, that was a thing, and it was a vehicle to get her there, but it was a hard process to watch, and it was tough.
It's really, to sum it up, it just shows that as regal and as poised as she is, there's a breaking point for all of us, and I think that was the vehicle and the device to kind of show that. And they wanted, Coogler wants you to feel for Okoye. That's all part of the
And everybody was. I felt like the kid who, when you and your cousins playing too much, and then they come in and they yell at everybody, and you were the one who wasn't doing nothing, and it was just like the council was like this. All right, my arm hurt.
Yeah. Oh man.
It was just a great watch. Yeah. And again, I just balanced of multiple characters because balance of multiple characters because again, like you get that from Okoye, her trying to protect Shuri. You're worried about her because I'm like, yo, are these people about to kill Okoye right now? I think we talked about this earlier. Like, I'm worried about Okoye. I'm worried about M'Baku. I'm like, who dying in this movie? Cause she fighting a lot of people by herself, and they strong, and they getting back up, and then to do everything that she did for Queen to be like, look, bro, I told you not to take her, so you fired. And also, just the last thing I'll say on Okoye, I had a conversation with somebody just about the timeline, and I just realized because this show, no, they would have had enough time. This show did come out after Chadwick's passing. It does feel like some of Falcon and the Winter Soldier fits into some point after T'Challa died, because Okoye is not with Thedora in that show.
Oh yeah,
which would make, well, actually no, I'm wrong. I'm absolutely wrong because then she got fired in the movie, so I don't know. Never mind. I'm gonna stop before I give myself a headache.
Good point.
But maybe because they were
They
talking
probably
about
would
like,
have
well,
said the general for Zemo.
Yeah, why wouldn't no Avengers and stuff in the movie? And it's just, I mean, not even in the movie. I do also get the sentiment of like why you couldn't see like Anderson Cooper, which by the way, Anderson Cooper with all the cameos for the news.
Yeah.
DC and Marvel. I mean, we forget Dawn of Justice. He was the guy. Like downtown is conveniently empty, which is good because Doomsday is destroying everything. But yeah, man, Anderson is just he's the guy's killing.
I do get if he'd have made a statement like you know Colonel Rhodes refuses to make a comment or something like that, just because it's like it does feel like where are all these people who love T'Challa at and that he helped out not coming and saying what's up. But also you got to remember Wakanda, the same people who helped Bucky and then let Tony and Rhodey struggle with fixing Rhodey's back. So
yeah,
nothing's perfect when you have so many moving parts. It's just
no, but you know, it was one of the things. I think that was one of the things I was thinking about when Okoye was being like basically dismissed from the Dora Milaje as general. I'm thinking, but she's an Avenger. Like she was one of the Avengers during the 5 year the 5 years of the blip. Like she was working on the team. She was the Wakandan branch of the Avengers, and like you're gonna take her out, and I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. But it was a good moment. It was a moment that was I felt like it was one of the, at that point I think when you start seeing Angela Bassett get a whole lot of screen time and Ramonda is getting these really impactful moments, you're like, oh no, she's gonna die. Like it's terrible. Like it was like Endgame when Tony starts reconciling with his dad in the past. Oh man, he's dead. You know, it's like.
I gotta learn to start remembering the signs because when they start showing you a character too much, that's usually a sign for trouble.
They're letting you say
future.
goodbye.
I'm so glad.
In order.
Yes,
So
I'm so glad we're getting more character development from this character. Oh, they're dead.
Well,
so, speaking of though, yeah, you said the last thing we had to talk about. We have to talk about that ending.
Yes.
Because
oh my goodness.
Oh
my gosh.
And I mean, one of the, I will say before Jay goes into it, I will say also one of the best ties and organic ties that I've ever seen in the MCU.
Circle.
That goes from, in the movie, but also just from the final scene to the post-credit scene. Because again, I think most of the time, we'd have to go through all this stuff because there's 30 movies at this point or whatever, but I don't think they're as organic. They usually come out of nowhere, and the fact that this was a continuation of the final scene is really beautiful and shows that it's just, again, Coogler's just really, really going into, he's not doing for razzle dazzle. He is going into the storytelling device, and he's going to continue and show you. And man, what an ending! What a great ending!
It's like I said with the Winter Soldier thing. It very much, and it goes into why I personally, while I get the sentiment of, you know, all these Avengers who was cool with T'Challa, why wasn't nobody saying like, "Hey, my condolences"? Which that's where I got into the whole. I feel like there is a little tie-in because I feel like, Bucky's kind of like, I ain't been calling Wakanda, I'm sorry, or whatever. But I feel like Coogler very intentionally made this a self-contained movie.
Yeah.
The point fact of the matter is that any future I'm showing you is the future of these characters, Black Panther, Wakanda, and where we're going forward. Now, the spoiler among all spoilers, if anyone's watching till the end, you obviously have seen the movie already. Y'all, when I tell you, me and my boy had the conversation of this being a possibility, because we were thinking like, multiverse variant, all that stuff. Maybe that's a little bit too cheap. That's kind of overusing the multiverse thing. But, many people said hashtag recast T'Challa. Many people said, we haven't even seen him meet Storm yet. There's so many stories from the comics that deserve to be told. And my friend and I thought, there was a 5-year gap. Who's to say him and Nakia's relationship didn't go to the next level right before that gap? And lo and behold, that post-credit scene, first of all, like you said, direct continuation, like literally started exactly where the end scene was, which was Shuri on the beach crying. When I saw Nakia holding a little boy's hand, I was like, it's come to life. And then when he says his name, Toussaint, and I'm like, okay, cool. I guess it's not exactly what I wanted. But then he clarifies that is my Haitian name. I was like, y'all not doing it.
And Shuri did the same thing. She's like, what? And we're like, huh?
And also something I talked about with Megs, it was a good parallel to when the council asked Killmonger his name. She immediately switches to the Wakandan and is like, what's your name? And that is where we learn that the MCU will have a T'Challa in the future.
Yeah.
And I love that because, again, we only ever had Nakia and King T'Challa. So, people's whole thing of like, we haven't seen like a story with him and Storm yet. Well, X-Men ain't even a thing and may not be a thing until 2026. Because I actually am a firm believer that mutants aren't coming until after Kang is done and over with.
Well, I mean, we've got Kamala, we've got Namor now that have been like titled as mutants. So it begs to differ. We may not get all of these kids, but the first thing in my mind was, oh, we're going to get a young Storm at some point.
Oh yeah, because what I believe is that now, and everybody who freaked out, you wouldn't have done this with a different actor. You wouldn't have done that. Just recast. Because you have people on multiple sides, right? There are some people who are like, the character has stories that deserve to be told. As a member of the Black community, there are people who felt like, with Everett Ross, not Everett Ross, William Ross. With William Ross, his actor just recently died, and they've already got who got recast?
Harrison Ford, allegedly.
I
still don't believe that one though, because Harrison Ford. This is a non sequitur, but he hates these kind of things, and I just don't buy into the fact that Harrison Ford's going to do it because he wanted to get killed off Star Wars for the longest time.
Well, I heard they did a screen a screen review of Indiana Jones 5, so he might be needing money.
Okay.
Because I heard it didn't go well.
Not he might need money, but yeah. So it's one of those things like people were like, you wouldn't have done this if it wasn't a minority actor, and it's one of those things that I had always said I'm okay with the thought of recasting T'Challa, in the future. I understand the sentiment of not doing it right now. I even had said a podcast I was listening to, they were like, at some point, everything gets redone. The MCU as we know it is going to stop, and then they're going to redo some of these movies the same way how we've had like 2 sets of adaptations of X-Men. We've had 3 versions of Spider-Man. So again, recast T'Challa could have happened in the future anyway. It didn't have to directly happen in this movie. And the way that they did it is so now we can continue to have stories of T'Challa, because also what people fail to remember, the MCU is purely an adaptation. And Multiverse of Madness also made this very clear as well. Not even Multiverse of Madness, because actually they shouldn't have said Earth 616. But anyway, non sequitur. This doesn't follow the comics to a T. It's always been its own thing with heavy inspiration from the comics. So the allowance to say we can adapt some of the stories, but with the son of T'Challa, who is also named T'Challa, now you have the best of both worlds, because Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa is not being replaced. It's being continued in another way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you notice? I only noticed this on the second watch that Toussaint and T'Challa, one and the same, was in. I didn't notice. I must have just missed it. He's in the scene where Ramonda goes to the orphanage, or is it the orphanage, or and I didn't notice until watching. Yeah, I didn't. He's one of the kids that. And again, I also, this is a lot. Again, here's reading into something, but I also think it could go either way. When Shuri's asking Nakia, did my mom meet him? And she says, yes. I wonder if that's the moment, or did she officially meet him and know him? Because it could be like, yeah, she met him. She didn't know she met him. It was in that moment where like this really sweet young boy just takes me to Nakia. And so she had an interaction with him, or did she get to know him and really know that this was her, her grandson? I don't know, but there's so many things.
I would feel like she did. I mean, this is obviously the secret that she was trying to tell Shuri at the riverbank.
You're right.
So,
I just got that cleared up for me earlier today, because I was so mad. I was like, wait, she never told her the secret, because I was wanting the spirit realm thing to be when that happened, and then I realized that was the secret.
Yeah.
You're right. I take it back. You're right.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're both right in that she knew about him, but I wonder if that was the first time they met. Because remember, she's like, we wish you could have, come to the funeral and all that stuff. Which actually maybe she would have met him, because this means Nakia and he were alive during the 5-year gap. And I believe the Queen was alive too during the 5-year gap. Who knows? Anyway, I was mad confused. But yeah, it's one of those things where I said the same thing. I was like, didn't she just meet him at the orphanage? Like when I don't know if it's an orphanage. I don't know why I keep saying that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also the governments of the world are a bunch of jerks. I mean, that's just how it is. Like the United Nations is becoming just as bad as the the Council for S.H.I.E.L.D. So
basically, it's basically the new S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. But man, we have been talking for 2 hours now.
That's my bad. I talk too much.
I'm down to 25%. I'm like,
we haven't had Michael say his thing. I'll say this and then shut up. But we
if I catchphrase.
Oh, I also was told today, Michael, that some people like you throwing your papers, and you haven't done any of that. So I think
yes, I knew it.
Yeah,
it'll be back next time. I promise.
Okay.
Like T'Challa, it'll be back soon. The Black Panther will return.
Yeah, but I am super glad. I'm super excited. Like I was okay when Kevin Feige first announced that they would not recast for T'Challa. And now it makes a whole lot more sense. And of course, I think Ryan Coogler just knew what he was doing. And the kid looks like Chadwick Boseman, which I thought was really cool. Like he had that look to him. And it's going to be nice to see a T'Challa grow into the character. And think about this. There are going to be kids who love Black Panther that are going to grow up with this Black Panther. And
Right. I almost wonder if they'll do a young, like, maybe he'll be in Young Avengers when they bring Young Avengers in. You know,
but
depends on how many years pass.
Yeah, but yeah, so the stories will still get to be told. Regardless, I know some people may have more things to nitpick about this film, but I am happy that this is what wrapped up Phase 4 for us. I think
it was a great end.
You know, Phase 4 has been very much of like a case study. You've given more directorial control. They went some storyline routes that maybe were a bit of hit or miss here and there. We got some different stories. Some stuff was maybe too lighthearted. I feel like this movie was a good part humor, but very much delved delicately into some very touchy topics, and I think did very well. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna miss Chadwick Boseman. I loved him as T'Challa, but also just getting to know who he is as a human being, even before this film, and seeing the love that he had, the respect that they did, the cast and crew, for him was really important. So yeah, final thoughts, Jay. Final thoughts on the movie.
Wonderful. I'm excited to see it the second time. Probably will see it a third, maybe if I can get a babysitter. And by babysitter, I mean one of the newborn's grandparents. But yeah, a lot of people, you completely remove any of the over-analysis. 10 out of 10 ending to Phase 4 for me. In the top echelon for the Phase 4 films. As far as execution goes, I mean, it's one of those things. The writing for this, to me, stands above, and this is a Spider-Man fanboy, above Spider-Man No Way Home. It was just very well done. I don't have very many complaints out of it.
Yeah, Michael.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough to put in final thought. I will say the one thing I've been thinking about. I think I had to look it up for Black Panther. I don't think he got a nomination. Coogler. Give him an Oscar nod for this movie as far as director. Like he fully deserves it. I know Black Panther got nominated. Was it 5 years ago already? For Best Picture. Hopefully that happens again with this because it was an amazing film. But I do think Coogler, when you think about the catalyst, the orchestrator, and the person behind these impactful films that he's behind, this guy is on a different level. I think I love the Russo brothers. I think what the Marvel Cinematic Universe does, it takes young talent and really brings it along, especially behind the scenes. So the Russo brothers are fantastic, but obviously I do think Endgame could have been nominated, but it wasn't. But then you also have someone like a John Watts behind the Spider-Man trilogy, which I thought, again, I think he was like a music video director before he came into that. And just this talent going up. But Coogler is like up here, right? With like the themes and the storyline. And again, not that it's different. And I to sum it up, and I'll say this, then I'll shut up. Had to fit in my line there. Just give him an Oscar nod. Do the thing that people appreciate, that really carries weight. We'll see if they do, but he definitely deserves it, 100%.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I feel like Black Panther deserved tons of accolades when it came out in 2018. This film, obviously, and I know the Academy is kind of skewed when it comes to superhero films or these type of action films. But this film touches on so many different things, and I think that's the great thing about the MCU. So many different genres. Coogler alone, with his work on this film, deserves an Oscar. The screenwriting of this film deserves an Oscar. The visuals, great cinematics. I know, like, She-Hulk gave its a little jab about the CGI. They couldn't afford her anymore because they were on a different project. And yeah, exactly right. And it's
Ruth Carter's going to win another Oscar for costume design. I mean, that was funny.
Absolutely. Like the costume.
She's an Oscar winner already, but it was funny. She was one of the credits at the premiere in New York.
Yeah.
When her name came up, there was an applause for a costume design. You know, like that is again John Caglione style, like makeup artist. Like Ruth Carter is a legend, and so she'll get another Oscar because I mean, what are better costumes than what we just saw here? Is there anything comparable to this? Like. So just spread the accolades out. They're not superhero films anymore. They're films that just happen to have superheroes in them. They carry themselves. And so, sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, it's fine.
Now for real.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's the thing. Like we're delving into a different world now when it comes to these films. And I think we're going to see it as well with DC Studios as there's more of a helming with the co-CEOs. That there is going to be a standard that they're going to be. It's finally people taking these things seriously, and now the world has to acknowledge it. This is a great film. This is a great film for remorse and for grief and
processing loss
and generational trauma, and I mean, like the touching on the conquistadors and the oppression that Namor was dealing with, and then also the worldview of this civilization that Wakanda opened themselves up, but the Talokan they don't want to do that. There's so many parallels, and I think it's very important. And it's films like these that I think help boost a narrative that we need to have. It builds the conversation that needs to happen. And where there were jokes in the first Black Panther about Everett Ross being a colonizer, we now see a world where they're imposing on other people for their desire of resources. This is the case study of what would it be like if that colonization and if that pillaging happened in modern day, and I think people need to realize there is a plausible idea of where that could happen, and yes, this is a fictional world with fictional precious metals, but it's a group of people that have put together a great story that you can learn something from, and at the same time. The amount of representation in this. I love how there was so much representation in Black Panther. There's double the representation in this film. And I'm looking forward to seeing, and I'm imagining Ryan Coogler is going to continue on this story, at least for another film, to dive more into Wakanda, because it's just a beautiful culture that they've built within the MCU. I think better even than that they ever did with the comics. And so, I love it. Love this film. It is definitely... As much as I love Shang-Chi, this movie is probably my number one right now. It might change in 6 months, but this is my number one film. It's
always a moving target.
Yeah, it's always a moving target. I always say if you ever want to know what movie I like, you have to ask me on the day, because it's going to change every day.
Whatever
the
one it is,
the question I'll leave it on this is, when are we going to see adamantium? Is that going to be some kind of derivative of vibranium, or
It's technically what it is. It's technically adamantium I believe it is also a space metal, and it's supposed to be, the whole thing is that it's an alloy made from metal and a meteor, and like them trying to copy vibranium essentially. Like that's what
I feel like they have given us the groundwork for this, because the world can't get a hold of vibranium. So what are they going to do? They're going to focus on adamantium.
Yep.
Really?
So,
they can make adamantium.
Yep. Yep. Man.
We also know there's a guy running around with claws in a bar fight.
Yeah.
And he would be a great test subject to see if this metal would be, safe for use. And oh man, the storylines. Okay, no more analysis. So Jay, thank you so much for joining. First of all, I want to also thank you publicly for letting me be on the Daily Kazoo for, I believe it was right before our first episode of Fandoms. So like,
Thank you for coming.
I personally feel like we had a bigger viewership for that first show solely because I was on there, and I think some of your viewers came over to check us out. So thank you for that. And if you guys don't know, the official Megs, King Von Schweet and J-Phrygian, or Jay, the Fridge, do the Daily Kazoo, it's a great show. In fact, I patterned some of the stuff that we do on here. You have to learn and take from things, and
absolutely.
And so, great show, great guys, by the way, as well. And if you haven't, if you don't follow any of them, well, at least one of the three are always good. Just depends on what day of the week, but definitely go give them a follow, especially Jay. Give Jay a follow. Check out the Daily Kazoo, and guys, this has been Fandoms episode 6. Now we are taking a hiatus for Thanksgiving. We may show up, Michael and I, to do something brief, but to give everybody else a break and a rest for the holiday, and because we might be like too fat to come down and get on a camera, we will take a break for Thanksgiving, and then we will be back the second week of December. Yeah, I've been Tony. This is Michael, and of course we've got Jay. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Yep, appreciate you. Thank you for having me. And now we're going to get them greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, lambs, yams, hogs. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you very much. And thank you, everybody, for watching and all the nice comments this evening.
All right.
Also, the new follows, too. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.